Hi, and welcome to the 8th webinar in 12D's Industry Solutions webinar series. My name is Lisa Stewart, and I'm the Marketing and Communications Coordinator at 12D Solutions. While we wait for our guests to finish joining, feel free to download the handout from the Handouts section, and I'll also be launching a polling question. You'll have about 30 seconds to answer about how important work sharing is to your business, and then I'll show the results. Okay, it looks like work sharing is pretty important to most of you, so I'm really looking forward to the presenters' insights on this. Our Industry Solutions webinars are designed to provide insights into overcoming challenges in an evolving industry in more effective and efficient ways. We'll keep running these webinars regularly and recording them for posting on our YouTube channel and our website. Our first 7 webinars from this Industry Solutions series, as well as the first 3 webinars from our training series, are already available online if you missed those. During this live presentation, you'll be able to type your questions along the way, as shown on the screen, and we'll answer as many as possible throughout the webinar. At the end, I'll also read out some of your questions to the presenter if there's time. Today's webinar on 12D Regional and Global Work Sharing will be presented by Joel Gregory, who is the General Manager for 12D Solutions and previously worked for 12D UK in the London office for 6 years, spreading the use of 12D model in the UK, Europe, Middle East and Africa. He is now Sydney-based and is working with clients of both 12D model and 12D Synergy products across the globe. Joel will discuss how, in a globalised world, the way civil projects are delivered is constantly changing. Larger and more sophisticated projects require staff and resources which can be geographically dispersed around the world. Seamless work-sharing platforms are required to enable this collaboration. This webinar will explore this industry challenge and examine how the adoption of 12D Synergy can enable seamless regional and global work-sharing. Over to you, Joel.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm really glad to see that everyone thinks work sharing is very important. That could have been interesting if the poll results went the other way. So work sharing. Today I wanted to cover quite a few topics. First of all, just discussing, what is work sharing? What do we mean? So I've got a couple of examples there. Some of the benefits of implementing work sharing and improving work sharing, what it actually involves, so the steps involved. Some common problems we've seen from many of our clients getting work sharing working efficiently. And finally, we'll talk about an industry solution to better enhance your work sharing. So first of all, I wanted to start with an example. A small subdivision project, and it's just one person on there. So he's importing the survey data, doing the design, he's drafting everything up in CAD, he's issuing documents to the client. Everything is done by this one person. Now this traditionally you wouldn't think of as a work sharing example. However, many of the principles that I'll discuss today, such as standards and procedures, are really important even for this single user. So even if you're in a small company or you're one user, don't think that this stuff doesn't apply to you. Because what happens if this person goes on leave? Someone has to cover his shift. They have to take on that project and they have to look and actually continue working. If it's a complete mess, it's going to be very hard to take up the project and run with it. Similarly, if that staff member leaves the business, to be able to continue with that project, it needs standards and procedures. And even if you're coming back to a project, the project's on hold for 2 years, you come back to it 2 years later, if you haven't got a standard procedure in place, 2 years could go by, you don't even know how you've designed the project yourself. So I think, work sharing is applicable to everybody. On a larger scale, so think of say a dam project in Tasmania. So here you've got a small team working together. They're sharing documents, they're communicating, and this is what you'd think of a typical work sharing environment. Now, there could be some very specific skills needed. Say for a dam site, there might be some 2D modelling, and there's no 2D modelers in the Hobart office, so they might bring in some specialist staff from Melbourne. So they might fly them in, or they might use different systems to enable that work sharing. So that's probably the scale that most people think of when they're thinking work sharing, this regional work share. Finally, we've got the largest scale, and these are the major projects. So they're major projects with big budgets, won by large contractors and consultants. Now, many of these projects in Australia these days are joint ventures. So essentially you've got two businesses with completely different systems, skill sets, software, standards and procedures, pooling resources and then attempting to work as a team. So this throws out some very interesting challenges. And again, the key here is to get consistent standards and procedures to move forward to enable the joint venture to work share. Now, work sharing isn't just for big business, for big companies, because with small businesses, you usually have a lot less resources at your disposal. You've got less staff and you need to use your resources even more efficiently than the big guys. You don't have these major budgets that you can spend. So you need to be agile, you need to be lean, you need to be more efficient, and work sharing is one of these things that you can do to leverage your business. So some of the benefits that I'll talk about today. Firstly, simplifying resource planning. So if you're able to use your talent pool from a global basis, it's very easy to bring on work and you can apply the work to anyone that needs it. So it simplifies that. You can also leverage specialist skills. So if it's a 2D modeler in Melbourne, as I said before, or anyone else in the business, you can leverage those skills no matter where they are. And you don't have to fly them or relocate them to the project office. You know, they can be in Cairns or Townsville, anywhere in the world, and they can still be utilised in the project. So it allows you to be a lot more agile. It also allows you to win more work in the busy times. So I think before the GFC, all the work was going to WA and Queensland. So everyone was relocating there. Now the tide has turned and everyone's moving back into Sydney. But if you're relying on just the resources in Sydney, once you get a certain amount of workload, you can't take on any more work. However, with work sharing, you can start utilising all the other offices in Australia to take on that work. So your busy offices, you can do more. And you can also utilise resources that may be cheaper. So I think at the moment in New South Wales are saying engineering fees, wages have gone up 25% because of the boom. So now would be a great time to bring in resources from Tasmania or Queensland, which may be a lot lower at the moment. You may also be able to bring resources from outside of Australia, so the Philippines or Indonesia or Thailand. And those are enabled if you have efficient work sharing principles in place. So what exactly does work sharing involve? Well, I've broken it down into four main principles. First of all, it's communication. Okay, you've got to be able to talk to each other. Without communication, you can never work as a team. Now, most businesses have done a great job here. We've got, everyone's got email, mobile phones, Link, Cisco Communicator, Skype. We've got all these systems, full-on video conferencing setups. Unfortunately, we don't have the NBN. We can't expect our government to have such a long-range foresight. But yeah, we've really used technology to increase our communication. The next one, which is probably the most important and sometimes overlooked, is standards and procedures. Okay, this is absolutely critical for work sharing. You need a consistent workflow and process to be able to share the data around. Okay, think about it as being able to talk the same language. If I'm speaking English and you're speaking French, it's going to be very hard for us to work together. So just making it all consistent is the key. Now, this is also the key to automation. So from a 12D perspective, if you've got your 3D design, you can then spit out with plotting files, you can automatically spit out all your plots. With snippets, you can put in those smart objects and speed up the design process, or you can write macros to be able to save a lot of time. So all this comes back down to standards and procedures. And it's not just about creating them, it's also about enforcing them, because there's no point in having a 100-page naming rules manual that sits on the desk that no one adopts. So unless they're enforced, well, it's all really just hot air. So you've got to enforce them. Okay. The next step here is the document management side. So we're talking documents, we're talking Word, Excel, PDFs, and other things. Now, a lot of businesses are doing lots of different things here. Some people manage their email simply in public folders. and then if that staff member leaves, you've got to dive through their public folders to find their email. Other companies are sharing data using Dropbox or OneDrive, consumer-grade document management systems, and others have implemented enterprise systems such as SharePoint to manage emails and documents. I've seen other businesses simply robocopying data from one office to the other, so it's just making copies of the data. Of course, this means there could be duplication, there could be massive errors, manual errors in copying the data across. There's no version control, there's no rollback, so it can be problematic having these half-baked solutions. And then the fourth step is the geospatial data management. And this is an area that not many businesses are doing too well. So a lot of them have got good system and processes for, Word, Excel, PDFs, probably because a lot of the PDFs are their contracts, so they're super important and seem valued by the bean counters. However, the geospatial stuff sort of gets forgotten about. However, that's the 3D data that the whole project is based upon. And there are quite a lot of reasons for this. The first thing is many IT departments are totally unaware of the specific challenges geospatial data poses. The data sets are enormous. The file structures are very unique to our industry. So IT departments don't really plan for it. And similarly, there aren't many data management systems out there that are targeted to our industry. So they don't know about CAD, DWG, XREF files. So all the XREFs break when you move them around. So you've got to have this intelligence and industry knowledge to be able to create this software. There are some products out there, but traditionally they've been super expensive as well. For 12D model data, that's a particular problem because of the folder structure. So some companies have gone in and written zipping programs so they can zip it up to their data management system. And of course, this is time consuming, it's error prone, and it still doesn't give you that version control, rollback, or managing the data that other systems can. So one thing that can sort of solve a lot of these problems is implementing a really good data management system. And I say data management because traditionally we've all talked about document management because that's where the focus has been, documents, where data management looks at communication, enforcing standards, and also managing documents and geospatial data. Now, common problems we have with work sharing, okay, mentioned it before, not enforcing the standards and procedures, okay. Something as simple as the naming conventions for CAD files. Imagine opening up a folder and it's full of different DWGs and there's no naming convention. So you're going to sit there opening all these really large files, which could take a lot of time, and just hoping that one of them is the latest version. It also opens up time, risk of opening an outdated file or using the wrong file, and that could be huge. There could be huge consequences for that as well. Also, even just something like layer names, get them wrong and it plots out the wrong color. In 12D model, if your naming isn't right, your snippets will break, your plot files won't work. A lot of businesses have, I guess you've always heard of the story of outsourcing a project, and it comes back, and because the standards and procedures are wrong, none of the naming works anymore. So you can't plot out your files, you can't use your macros, and a lot of the time it's actually faster to redesign the entire project than it is to actually get it working, get the naming conventions correct so it can work in your actual systems. So yeah, really, really important stuff. Most DMSs out there, they're generic. They only worry about Word, Excel, and PDFs. So if you're looking at DWGs or 12D model, there's just no chance. A lot of these systems are limited by things such as file size. No files over 2 gigabytes. Well, I guess that means you're not using point clouds or ECWs or anything else. So there's a lot of real basic limitations which just mean it can't be used for geospatial data. I mentioned it before, there are data management systems out there targeted for our industry, but they are super expensive. And not just expensive to purchase, but they take a long time to implement, to configure, to train your users, and just the ongoing maintenance of the system is just prohibitive for most clients. And finally, the DMSs don't understand about the folder structure. Now, I've been asked a lot of times, why 12D model has a folder structure? Why isn't it like CAD with a DWG? So I thought I'd just touch on this just for a couple of moments. 25 years ago when Lee and Alan built the product, they always wanted 12D to be fast even with large projects. Okay, that was their vision from day one. So they chose a folder mainly because it was fast. Okay, if you've got a DWG file, say it's 100 megabytes, every time you run the project, it has to load that entire 100 megabytes into RAM. With 12D model, you could have thousands of files. You only need to load the individual files that you need. So Windows is going to work a lot faster running with lots of small files rather than one big behemoth. Second, transfers less data. We only have to save individual files rather than that big file. So it saves on just data transfer, which again is very useful if you're saving projects on the network, which most people are. It's much easier to manipulate files. So if you've got plot files, template files, MTFs, you can actually open Notepad++ and you can edit those files if you want. It's not, again, this one massive file that you can't do anything with. And finally, corruptions. I'm sure everyone's had an experience with DWG files corrupting and then the entire project's dead. First of all, Windows doesn't like handling large files. The larger the file size, the more likely it's going to be corrupted. So lots of smaller files reduces that chance of corruption. Also, if an individual file is corrupted, a lot of the times you can just replace it with a backup file of that file and then the project will run. So they're the main reasons why 12D went down the folder path, and I think it was the right decision. But because it's a bit different from the average system, there is no data management system out there which can handle 12D model data until now. So the industry solution, how do we solve this problem, get some efficient work sharing principles? Well, the first thing is really investing in developing and enforcing standards and procedures. Like, I can't emphasize that enough. The billable hour is a real burden for our industry. And especially since the GFC, there's been an even greater pressure on staff to have billable hours. So it's very hard to spend the time needed to write standards and procedures or write a macro. Now, this is a real shame because a small investment in writing one macro can potentially have a great ROI if you're going to roll that out so hundreds of users could use that macro. If you can save half an hour, times that by 200, you could save a fortune. However, when things are tough, they're the first areas that get squeezed, and that's a real problem. So I guess it takes a bit of foresight and vision to invest this, even in the down times, so that when work does start again, you're more efficient, you're leaner, and you've got lower overheads to go get the job done. Secondly, recommend adopting a data management system. So you've got a single source of truth of data. You're no longer copying it into other systems, uploading to Dropbox to transfer, all that kind of stuff. You've just got one managed system for your data. It's a check-in, check-out system, so you've got version control, an audit trail, and roll back to any previous version of any files. It's built for our, it's not some generic solution customized. Also, it can handle your geospatial data, so your CAD, 12D model, and other products. And probably most importantly to yourselves, it's also got to be cost effective to implement, to set up, to train, and the licensing fees. All that needs to come into the equation. So something that does tick off all these boxes is 12D Synergy, 12D's data management system. It was developed to assist with the Christchurch earthquake in 2011, so it's now 5 years old, and we've had an overwhelming response from a range of different clients in Australia here and New Zealand. A lot of them now are adopting it to solve specifically a work sharing problem, mainly with CAD or 12D model or both. But it's not just for major consultants. We've got small consultants coming on board. We've got one company is a one-man survey business. We've got multinational contractors and also local government and road authorities all coming on board. So it really does cover everyone that's interfacing with our kind of data in our industry can adopt Synergy. So people that don't really understand what a DMS is, I'll spend 1 minute just on giving you an overview of what it is. So it's software that sits on your server with an SQL database, and then you connect to it with your computer and you check in, check out data. Everything across the system is encrypted, so it's nice and safe. And you can also access your data from outside of the office, so you can work from home and still be able to work on the project. There are options to go offline, so if you're going on a flight or working on site, you can take the data with you. You don't have to always be connected. And we've even got a data syncing tool for contractors, which will enable the central database model to be synced to surveyors using 12D Field on Windows tablets. So that's a nice handy option there too. So I thought I'd touch base on the four main elements of work sharing and just how a product like Synergy can benefit your business. So first of all, on the communication side, email management, it's been around for 30 odd years, but email's still not managed well by most businesses. Gone are the days where every piece of mail was was scanned and put into the archive. Now it's all in our email, in our inboxes. So being able to have a central repository for this email and making it easy to put it in there is key for email management. So I've got a nice ribbon that sits in Outlook, so you can do all your email tracking right there. We've got forums attached to each project, so you can have communication on a project basis, and it's also archived away in the project. You've got like post-it notes, so you can make comments and have communication about files or projects. And you can also get notifications. So say if your colleague checks in a 12D model project, you can get an email alert saying, hey, James has now checked this in, you can now edit it. So it just helps with the collaboration and teamwork. From a standards and procedures point of view, the biggest one is enforcing naming rules. So we've got a little option there where you can write the naming rule syntax that you're using, and that could include different attributes in the system that'll enforce your naming standards on people. The good thing is it's really, lightweight, easy to set up, and it's actually easy to comply. So it's actually easier to follow the naming rules than to break them. So that's really good, because then half your procedures can be enforced right there. We've also got tasks where all your workflows can be predefined and assigned to the appropriate people with deadlines and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of clients have adopted Synergy for their QMS process, and so they've got a good audit trail, and they make sure that everything that needs to be done on the job is actually done. Okay, so that's really, really popular. Also, have you ever had a survey data and you've just got no idea where it came from, and there's a problem with the original survey and you just want to find out who the surveyor was so you can follow up with some extra information? Every email that comes in, it's associated with the attachments that were originally in that email. So you can actually look at the survey data, find that email right away, open up, see if there were any comments, directions in the email, and even reply to the surveyor for more information. So there's this connection between all the data that's in Synergy, which is really helpful. Also for document transmittals, a lot of clients will just have an Excel spreadsheet and they manually manage the documents that are going out, and then they make a copy of everything that's left the office. We've just packaged that up, and it's a really a nice process, all inside of Synergy. And a lot of clients will use Dropbox or something to send large files because their email can't handle it. Well, we've pretty much packaged a Dropbox-like solution inside of Synergy, so you can send someone an HTTP link and they can download, and you can put an expiry date and a password on there, so you can just transfer files backwards and forwards much easier. Because document transmittals and publishing, transmittals are still a part of your work sharing. It's an output, and you even want that to be consistent, because you want your end client to look at you and see a nice consistent output every time. You don't want someone sending you an FTP one day, an FTP link, and then a Dropbox link, and then sending things in email. You want it consistent every time. On the document management side, we've got, again, version control and rollback for every single file in the system. In Word and Excel, so your common applications, we've got a ribbon bar, so you don't have to go into Synergy at all. You can just review all the information right there, check in and check out. From Word documents, you can create PDFs right from within the system, so you don't have to use any external tools. And on the CAD management side, lots of features there. Again, your version control and rollback. You've got a ribbon bar inside of AutoCAD or BricsCAD, right up to 2016. Also, all the attributes from Synergy can be fed into your title block, so they can be automatically filled out. Same thing can happen for Word documents as well, so you can have your standard templates with letterhead, and all your standard information just gets fed in automatically, just saving you a hell of a lot of time, and it means that you don't have to manually type things in anymore, so it reduces that manual entry risk of error. We also manage your XREFs, so if you move DWGs around on the network, they no longer break, which is really handy. And also there's local caching. What that means, so all your data lives on the server, but when you check it out, it'll copy it into a reserved space on your local drive, which means programs like CAD will run much, much faster than if you're running off the network. And that'll be the same for every product you run, including 12D model. It'll be running off your local drive. It's just so much quicker than waiting on network speeds. So that's a huge benefit as well. Finally, just on specifically the 12D model data management, version control and rollback. So you can see there you've got a preview, so you can see each stage and see what's changed in the project. So a full audit trail of everything that's ever happened in your project. We've got permission controls, so you can lock out the drainage engineers so they can no longer access your survey data, because you don't want the drainage people updating the survey. They shouldn't even be in there. So maybe they've got read-only access, but they can't actually go in and edit it and break everything. Customization, a lot of clients have some issues just managing all the different customization files and making them available to different clients, different users. So that can all be managed from within Synergy. It also means you've got version control on those files. So say you change your ENV file, made a mistake, you need to roll it back, that's now totally possible. So it's a lot harder to break your customization and just easier to roll it out across your business. There's a lot of enhanced functionality on the sharing side, a lot more powerful. You can restrict access to sharing, who can access, why, really powerful there on the sharing. And also a huge reduction in the amount of data transferred on your network. We've done some research, and most of our clients that have come out, and we're looking at a 90% data reduction. So you save time, A, because you don't have to wait for a project to open and save. Also, there's a 90% reduction in the amount of data moving around the network. So I've seen a lot of businesses where their IT infrastructure is just crippled by people with massive CAD and 12D model projects sending gigabytes around the networks. The networks are fast, they're just sending way too much data across the network. So a product like Synergy can reduce it by around 90%, which is fantastic for the IT people. For your larger businesses, the other option we've got too is file replication servers. So what that means is you can have your primary server in Sydney, and then you can have a file replication server in Brisbane. So certain projects can be replicated in Brisbane, so that all the files that you need to access in Brisbane, they're all on a local server rather than having to talk to Sydney all the time. Fairly simple, right? Now you can have a full network of different FRSs, and you can even have sub-FRSs. So you can have Sydney pushing data to Brisbane, and then that FRS pushes data to Townsville. So you can route the traffic the way that you actually want as well. What it allows is for an entire, a massive organisation with say 30 offices, all to work off one system, but to have files locally cached in your server, so it's nice and fast. It also reduces the strain on your network, because if you had 30 offices all wanting to talk to one server, even great, the fastest of internets wouldn't be able to handle that. These routing rules as well are totally configurable, so you can really match the pipes of your offices. So if Brisbane is fast, then you can route most of the traffic through there if you want. So yeah, really, really powerful, and allows big enterprise businesses to work share much, much faster. Okay, so that's work sharing from my side in a nutshell. Now, getting in conclusion, so the four main areas were the communication, standards, document management, and geospatial data management. So they're the four. I guess look at your own business and see how are you performing in each of those four different areas, and which ones do you need to work on. We also discussed Synergy and how it can solve the work sharing problem. It can provide a single source of truth, give you version control, rollback, version history, simplify your resource planning. Work sharing allows you to leverage skills, from your geographically dispersed workforce, reduce your travel time and relocation costs. They're a big cost right there, so you can reduce that, and just allow you to smooth the work over across your business. And a system like this, it can be easy to set up, configure, and maintain. Applicable to all types of business. We're not really pigeonholing anyone here, and most important, it's really cost effective. It's simple to set up, configure, and to use. The licensing fees are really affordable for even the small to medium sized business. Okay, so I think I'll hand back over to Lisa for our Q&A.
Thanks, Joel. Yes, I think we've got time for a few questions. Nathan from Brisbane asks, what are the system requirements for 12D Synergy?
The server needs Windows 7 or later, and I think Windows Server 2008 or later. So it doesn't have to be a server, by the way. It can just be a regular workstation. We've got a lot of companies just on a standard PC. It can also be a virtual server as well. It doesn't have to be physical hardware. I think SQL 2008 R2, I think, is or later. And I think most servers these days don't come with less than 8 gigs of RAM. But if you're a large instance, you probably want 16 gigs or more. So realistically, for an enterprise DMS system like Synergy it's really low specifications. I think the full list is on the website if you need to check on that.
Thank you, Joel. Angela from Sydney would like to know, if you have multiple offices, does every office need a file replication server?
Oh yeah, I should have really mentioned earlier. No, the answer is no. A lot of our clients at the beginning said, look, we must have FRSs, file replication in every office. And we said, okay, let's start slowly, because it's always best to start an implementation of any enterprise software slowly rather than try and do everything at once. So they implemented it in one office, and then the speeds between the offices were often fast enough that they didn't actually need a file replication server. The option's always available later on. If you need it, you can always add it. So with the intelligent data transfer, reducing the speeds data transferred by up to 90%, a lot of the times those type of features are good enough that you can work without an FRS, but it does give you that extra capability if you need it.
Great. And Dave in Melbourne wants to know whether 12D Synergy works with V10, so 12D Model 10.
No, not really. I guess it's just another reason to upgrade to 12D Model version 11, because that's where most of the sharing and all that compatibility really works. So no, really, it's only version 11 with Synergy and beyond.
Thanks. I think we'll just do one more. Mark of Brisbane says, how long does it take to get 12D Synergy implemented?
Well, I think I mentioned before, it's quite quick. Realistically, once you've set up your server or workstation, the installation itself is no more than an hour. It's pretty easy. A full training, the whole system is 6 hours, and then configuration and setup is pretty simple, and can be done just by a 12D champion. It doesn't have to be an IT expert at all. We then recommend finding a pilot project, something small, and then once you're happy with that, we can then roll out all new projects can then use 12D Synergy. So yeah, we always recommend start small, get it all working, get it configured nicely, and then push it out to the rest of the system. So yeah, you're not talking long at all. It's really easy to set up, and that's why companies even down at 4 or 5 users can implement it, just because it's so easy to set up.
Thank you, Joel, and thanks to all our keen participants. That's actually all we've got time for in the live Q&A today. Sorry to anyone whose questions we couldn't get to live, but we'll answer you individually afterwards. The recording of this webinar will be available in coming days through our website and our YouTube channel. Our next 2 Industry Solutions webinars will be 12D International Conference Preview on the 8th of June and 12DA Library Storage Basins on the 22nd of June. In case you haven't heard, we're also holding What's New in 12D webinars from the 24th to the 26th of May, so that's just next week actually, and we'll be continuing our training webinar series after that. So do see our website for details of all of those. We'll keep updating the website with many more topics in coming weeks and also keep you posted through email and social media. And don't forget, we've also got our next 12D International Conference this July with the Associated Innovation Awards. The awards closing date is the end of May, so if you haven't submitted your entry, you've still got just a little time. If you need to contact us in the meantime, our details are on the screen now. That concludes our presentation for today. Thank you for attending, and we hope to see you at future webinars.